The presenters of The View were scrambling to defend themselves after Karoline Leavitt's bombshell revelation. The details of what happened, why her bombshell expose has everyone talking, and what this could imply for the show's future today are all things we're exploring. If you've been wondering what led to this collapse, you're at the right place. Drama is escalating as a result of Karoline Leavitt's bold disruption of the political landscape. The right is known for causing trouble, but when Karoline emerged as Trump's press secretary, Democrats launched their attacks and took on much more than they could manage. However, Karoline's unrestrained strategy led to their smear campaign failing and backfiring catastrophically. The presenters of The View are desperately attempting to clean up their own mess after what began as small-time envy has now gone so bad that it has ruined their reputations. The aftermath is very amazing, I assure you. Consider Joy Behar as an example. Although she often supports women's liberation and calls herself a feminist, she overreached herself by discounting Karoline's accomplishments as only her looks. Someone who disparages a successful young lady while claiming to promote women's rights is obviously hypocritical. Karoline, a self-reliant individual, didn't hesitate to criticize these progressive pals. But wait, what would happen if Karoline got a 10? Since Fox News' Greg Gutfeld made a joke that made everyone laugh and caused a lot of outrage, let's just say that the internet hasn't stopped laughing. Their so-called importance is on borrowed time, and after Trump is done with them, they won't have any SC or media diversions to keep them relevant. However, Karoline's criticism of the Democratic propaganda apparatus didn't end there. She was quite clear that they could either be forgotten or ride the Trump wave.
Calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1.5.
Goldberg intervened after Joy's offensive comments in an attempt to provide an alternative story that left Americans in shock. She reprimanded Karoline for what she saw as a lack of tolerance for vulnerability, going all mother hen. They experienced every bit of that reality check, judging by the startled quiet on The View. Anyone watching can see that The View is just envious that someone younger, smarter, and really worthy is outperforming them. However, in a now viral video, Karoline wasn't having any of it, and Whoopi wasn't offering guidance. Rather, she was hurrying to limit the harm. Whoopi made an effort to present wokeness and civil rights as interchangeable terms. Karoline wasn't fooled for a second. She brutally and precisely spelled out Whoopi's flawed logic, proving that Whoopi was either intentionally deceiving her audience or didn't comprehend the difference. Whoopi was clearly outraged based on her answer. If Whoopi is such a strong supporter of women's rights, why didn't she confront Joy Behar for restricting Karoline's success to her appearance, given that her so-called moral compass only points left rather than holding her co-host accountable? During Karoline's first White House news conference, the 27-year-old ventured to criticize the legacy media for losing the faith of the Americans, which led to Whoopi attacking her. Rather of confronting the real problem, Whoopi cleverly attempted to turn it into an identity politics issue by using the racial card. Karoline wasn't done, however, as she chastised the program for making baseless accusations, like when they tried to hold Elon Musk accountable for an attempted assassination. She also brought attention to the contradiction that presenters recklessly spread misleading information while continuing to demand accountability. A few years ago, she reminded them, the media was singing a different tune. But now that they are eager to control the narrative, they will twist any news to fit their own agenda. Karoline was not going to let them get away with it. The days of unrestricted propaganda are now finished because of Karoline's brave stance. The View and other legacy media outlets have been shaping public opinion, suppressing opposition, and promoting whatever narrative worked for them for years without facing any consequences. Let's face it, these publications' worst fear is having to explain for their reporting because of her desire for accountability. Their whole strategy is failing without the chance to falsify the facts. Karoline proposed a radical reorganization of the White House press pool to make established media outlets responsible for their years of disinformation and unfair coverage of President Trump. She said, "We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House." The White House Correspondents Association and the Associated Press dominated the conversation for decades, deciding which narratives were promoted and who was allowed to ask questions. This is no longer the case, as Karoline has now made quite apparent. Voices from the new media that really challenge the establishment will now have access to the 2 front-row seats that were previously reserved for White House employees. To further agitate the public, Karoline restored press permits for 440 journalists whose rights had been taken away by the Biden administration. Legacy media will not operate without oversight. The push for openness was praised by many, but the View panel's reaction was quite different. Sunny Hostin laughed at the notion that new media reporters should be allowed to attend briefings, acting as though only legacy media elites should be seated at the table. Then, in her usual condescending manner, Whoopi cut in, warning that under the new government, people would merely spew stuff. The irony was clear. Mainstream media, including The View, has been manipulating stories to fit their own agendas for years. Karoline is holding them responsible now, and Whoopi wants to talk about standards.
To Hitler, they have mocked him, they have shamed him, they have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the lies that they have spewed.
The reason why The View presenters are worried for the first time in years is because they love being in the limelight and telling the audience what to believe. Millions of Americans are now turning to alternative media sources. They hate that. They are losing control of the story. Ultimately, the goal here is attention, not journalism or morality. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest press secretary in U.S. history, criticized established media for losing their credibility and said that millions of Americans are now getting their news from other sources. The White House has been under fire for years for spreading false information and smears without any opposition, but Leavitt said that those days are ended. "We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong or there is misinformation about this White House," Leavitt said. Not to be overlooked, legacy media as a whole was just put on notice by the legendary press secretary Karoline Leavitt. Karoline replaced Karen Jean-Pierre when she was unable to get rid of her with flimsy comments. Karoline has shown that leadership is about speaking for the American people and holding power accountable, not about ticking diversity boxes, despite Pierre's need to remind everyone of who she was at every chance. When The View tried to snare her with a classic gotcha question on illegal immigration, they thought they had her encircled, but they were mistaken.
And Joy Behar and those guys, of course this was going to happen. This is why conservative women just have to move on, do their thing, and not worry about the criticism from folks like at The View.
And we are expecting the media to be
The Democrats dug down on their stale left-wing narrative in a desperate effort to trap Karoline. But Karoline turned the script and reminded them that law-abiding individuals are valued more in Trump's America than lawbreakers.
Inflating two ideas, this word wokeness didn't look like she really understood what it meant, or certainly the way Karoline Leavitt meant it when she made that statement, and she was conflating it with civil rights and how women didn't have the right to vote and own property and all of that. That has nothing to do with wokeness, which is, of course, about putting people in there because of their immutable characteristics rather than the merit that they bring to the table.
They like acting as if they care about justice. But let's be honest, this was not about safeguarding immigrants. Rather, it was about trying to dissuade a woman who was much too smart to fall for their ploys. Watching them stumble and not giving up, Karoline is relishing every moment of it.
3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
all of them because they illegally broke our nation.
Karoline finally revealed the ultimate truth. The View has become so distracted by trying to please the left that they have lost any sense of their purpose. Karoline is putting the whole legacy media apparatus at jeopardy, not just The View. She is making their playbook public, and they are only supporting her argument as they find it difficult to keep up.
There is so much good news, so much winning out of the Trump White House right now that the mainstream legacy media can't keep up with it. And the Democrats are in complete disarray because they have become a globalist party who like to spend taxpayer dollars on useless priorities just to cater to the left's demands here at home.
For years, they have served only as a voice for the Democratic agenda. But now that Karoline is holding the media responsible, they are at a loss about what to do. What do you think then? Is the hegemony of the mainstream media coming to an end? Or will they manage to reclaim their position? Let me know in the media comments. And if you want more brutal breakdowns like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I promise you that this war is far from ended.